OCO, everyone.
OCO.
So this was brought to my wife and I's attention, and we wanted to go over it because there's a few things that we want to talk about here. So let's start off with this article. According to the New York Post, it says that a California task force voted Tuesday to limit reparations to black families whose ancestors were in the U.S. in the 19th century, drawing criticism from others who support compensation regardless of lineage. So in other words, there are people out there that are upset, probably because of the fact that their lineage doesn't go that far back and they just got here recently. So continuing with the article, the task force voted 5-4 after hours of debate that at times became heated. A proposal within recommendations is expected to release by July 2023 before it could go before the state legislature for a vote. Lisa Holder, a task force member and a civil rights attorney, said the task force should continue to listen to the public's opinions while working with economists to carve out a plan. Stating, quote, "We need to galvanize the base, and that is black people," she said. "We can't go into this reparations proposal without having all African Americans in California behind us." That sounds, as soon as I hear that, that sounds very political to me. Right after that, it says Governor Gavin Newsom signed legislation 2 years ago to give, quote, "special consideration to black Americans who are direct descendants of enslaved people." And speaking of special consideration, hon, you said you had more on that topic?
Well, I wanted to look up the special consideration because I know that consideration could mean like a thought, or consideration is actually a form of payment. So I just wanted to look at that legislation, and I was able to pull up that exact bill that they're referencing in this article, which is Assembly Bill number 3121, Chapter 319. And this was actually published October 20th, 2020.
In which this task force was established in 2020.
Exactly. And this bill will require the task force to recommend, among other things, the form of compensation that should be awarded, the instrumentalities through which it should be awarded, and who should be eligible for compensation. But when I heard all of this coming directly from this bill, it goes back to what was stated in this article as saying they need to galvanize the base.
And that is black people. She
Exactly.
said we can't go into this reparations proposal without having all African Americans in California behind us.
That means they're still trying to figure out exactly who is the base and who should be included. Because when they say black people, whom exactly does that include? And when they say African Americans, whom exactly does that include? They're waiting for, or they're trying to add in East Africans, West Africans, and Caribbeans. But I've also noticed that they're accepting immigrants. So that opens this reparations up to a larger pool of people that may have never been affected by what they're trying to receive reparations for.
Well, that was the whole point about this vote, because according to this article, on Tuesday's vote, they said some black Californians, such as immigrants from East and West Africa and the Caribbean, would not be eligible for compensation. And then it says that means only a fraction of the state's 2.6 million black residents will be able to benefit from the proposal. But
why is that an issue?
Why is what an issue?
Why would that be an issue if it's not available to those immigrants?
I think some immigrants state that they should get something just because they're black and they live in California. Because they really have no say-so when it comes to them being enslaved. They weren't enslaved, in North America. Because that's what this is about. And once again, this is another proposal. This is not and I don't want people to get this twisted. This is not there's a bill and it's about to pass through the Senate and everything else. This is just a proposal. And they're still trying to figure out how the people are going to have to prove that they were descendants. See, this is another thing. People still going to have to be able to prove their ancestry, because it says right here, the task force also has to come up and approve a plan on how Black Californians will be able to prove their ancestry.
Something else that I noticed about this also was this isn't just about people being enslaved or descendants of enslavement. They're also adding in people that are being discriminated upon. So it's like they have to include discrimination in this because they really don't have a lot of information or a long list of slaves.
Right, you're not going to find any, and I agree with that. That's the reason why they say reparations. In the article, it says reparations could include assistance with buying homes, establishing business.
You see that? They can't prove slavery to even grant us reparations. They can't even prove it themselves.
Grants to churches and organizations and free college tuition. Yeah, that's not really benefiting us. I'm going to be honest with you. The reason why is because they're not making sense here. The issue that they're having is discrimination amongst us having equal rights as those same immigrants that came over here. What a large amount of people are going to find out is when they do their ancestry, they were already here. Now, what are they going to do with the people that were already here prior to these immigrants arriving here? What are you going to propose now? Is it just going to be, we're going to help them buy homes and establish businesses and grants for churches and that?
If they were already here, what that mean? What that mean? You know what that means. Indian, Aboriginal. Now we want our land back. That's what that means. See, they opening up a can or something they don't really want to.
Yeah, that's what it's for. It's for the people coming over to help them further. Not necessarily for the people that are here.
To go back to that, this has nothing to do with us. Once again, I mean, from what I see, this has nothing to do with us. They also state in the article, while Black residents make up about 6.5% of California's population, according to the U.S. Census data, Black men make up nearly 30% of the state's prison population. What about that? Are they going to get some opportunities to get out? I mean, because not every person in prison is a criminal. They could have been falsely accused. But as long as their siblings or relatives are able to buy a house and establish businesses, I'm going to tell you, let me explain something. They do make it hard for people to buy a home or establish a business based off of that person's credit and their credit history, right? But the problem is that our people are not taught about establishing businesses, what to do to buy homes, or how to even build up their credit. They're just basing it off of word of mouth. How about programs that will allow them to be taught these things that will bring them up? They could benefit from that versus it being a proposal for some type of monetary gain. Because if you think about it, let's just say, for example, they said 2.6 million Black residents in California. Let's just say that the proposal does pass and turns out to be a bill. And the bill allows for compensation, monetary compensation for those residents. They're not going to know what to do with that type of money in order for it to pass on throughout their generations. For them to benefit from having some form of compensation to better themselves. The majority of the people won't know what to do. Once again, you're not going to the root of the problem.
Jordan about to be a rich man again, because that's all he's going to do is buy Jordans and stuff like that. Like, that's it. That's it. We don't need reparations, be honest with you. We had it 20 times over. We had it. We had it. But if we don't have families, mother, father, children, because a nation is nothing but a collection of families. So if we don't have families, if we don't have a family unit, a family base within our communities, come on. Forget about it. Forget about it. Reparations for who? For what? Please.
You giving them money. Okay, they pay up all their bills, and then what? And then what? Spend it again? They just, it's set up or designed rather for us to just spend our money. I'm just saying. This proposal is not hitting everything. And then once again, to go back to this, the East and West Africans and the Caribbeans have no say-so in this. They weren't enslaved here. Okay? And even that vote lets you know that they weren't enslaved here and just got here in the 20th and 21st century. They stated that as well. Actually, that was a Washington Times article.
Yo, they already proven who we are just in this bill alone. Just in this bill alone, they already proven they didn't bring us from Africa. We were already here because majority of the black Caribbeans and Africans, East African, West Africans, South Africans just came here in the 20th century. I know my grandmama and great-grandmama and great-grandfather, they've been here. Been here. Cherokee, Mohiki Creek, you already know. So for those who want to go with the government institutionalized fantasy of we brought you here on ships from Africa, fine. That's what you want to believe. But if you're African American, you can't get reparations because you're African. And Africans wasn't enslaved here.
Cool, that stated that. And it was actually up under a similar title called California Reparations Task Force Votes to Limit Compensation. I want to quickly read that. It said, those favoring a lineage approach said that a compensation and restitution plan based on genealogy as opposed to race has the best chance of surviving a legal challenge. There's a reason for that. They also said that black immigrants who chose to migrate to the U.S. in the 20th and 21st centuries do not share the trauma of people who were kidnapped and enslaved. I'm telling you, one way or another, people are going to learn that other people, even those of South America, don't share the same stories as we do. Okay?
Not at all.
This is going to expose it all when they do their genealogy, right here.
But I really think something else is going on here, because something that they say a lot, several times within this information, within the bill itself and within the article, is that this task force is only there to recommend, recommend proposals, but it's based off of study. So they're still trying to examine and study the information, study what has happened to people, study slavery.
Because it never existed, man. It never existed. We wasn't enslaved. We were sharecroppers who were snaked and contracted out of our land. Jim Crow was another legislation to push us off of our reservations. All right? I'm only up here in the northern hemisphere of the country because of my grandparents who left the South in the 30s and in the 1930s and the 1940s. That's the only reason why I was born up here. That's the only reason why my parents were born up here. Because their parents left the reservation in the South because of Jim Crow, because of segregation, because of all these laws that were limiting their ability to survive and progress and have and acquire anything. So this is why millions of black folks left the South in the Midwest and, were really the South and moved up to the Midwest and the North. Because of that fact, because of Jim Crow. And because of Jim Crow is why legislation was passed in 1968, civil rights movements, things of this nature.
And to study slavery in the U.S.
And you know what that is? That's H.R. 40. 1989. They've been studying. Oh my goodness! I'm telling people.
You brought that up before, and all of this stemmed back to. They brought this up as far as it's stemming back to the bill that was presented by John Conyers Jr.
That's him.
Which
HR
was
40.
HR 40. Yes. And so this bill just simply establishes the commission to study. And I'm trying to figure out how they're still doing studies, but yet they're teaching this curriculum to our children as if it has already happened and it truly existed. What is it to study if you're so sure about it?
Once again, that all of our people went through slavery. Keep in mind, John.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Like, yo, this is what I'm talking about, yo. Like, for real, like, they're studying slavery, but they can come out with Amistad and Roots, and they can put all this 1619 project. They can do all this bullshit that ain't true. Come on, man. Listen, man. Stop playing with me, man. We ain't all stupid.
John Conyers put out that HR 40 in 1989. It's 2022. That's 33 years ago. So that's a whole generation ago. That's a problem. We still going over the same thing over and over again. That's why I said you guys got to stop looking to this government for a handout. When they know, okay, slavery happened, right? But slavery happened differently from what we were told. And that's why I always recommend you guys to do your own genealogy.
How many people in your family was a slave? How many people in your family was a slave? For real. Nobody. How many of your people came from Africa? Where's your African tribal marks? Where's your African name within your family since y'all came from Africa? Where's the bill of sale of your family members who were slaves? None whatsoever. Your family was sharecroppers like my family was. We worked on the plantation because we owned the plantation. There was no slavery. Because if slavery existed, Jim Crow wouldn't have existed. They wouldn't needed to create laws to segregate black folks from white folks because black folks were economically superior to the Irish and the Polish and the Germans and whoever else they were floating over here through Ellis Island and Angel Island or whatever. See, this is where you get the Black Wall Streets and all that stuff from. Slavery? That's an excuse. That's an excuse black people use not to unify, not to come together. Really, let me continue.
They're not going to have a choice but to tell people to do their own genealogy. And guess what? Not only are East and West Africans not eligible, nor the Caribbeans or Caribbeans, neither are you. The reason why is because of how slavery went. Everybody thought that the slaves worked for free. See, and I'm telling you, that's going to expose it. That's not in every case, but that's in the majority of the people's cases. They were indentured servants. They were contracted employees. Just like right now.
It's called sharecroppers. They have sharecropping right now. They replaced the black sharecroppers with Mexican sharecroppers. They're still doing the same. They still down south picking cotton right now. Wearing the same little dusty, dingy clothes. In the fields, in the cotton fields today, they wear the same crap. Sharecroppers. Sharecroppers. Not slaves. Indentured servants. A lot of the look at the 1619 project. 7 years after the Africans was brought over here from Africa, they say. 7 years later, they was given their freedom. 7 years later, they were given their freedom. So who was enslaved? And they were white sharecroppers, indentured servants, brung over here, European, African, Asian. Let's not talk about the 1900s when they brung millions and millions of poor Europeans as indentured servants to work in the factories and on the railroads in the early 19th century. Let's not talk about them. I love history.
So what you're doing is fighting for, what is it called in the employment realm right now? When an employee has a problem with the employer and they do a equal opportunity employment, I'm trying to think of the terminology here, but they put up a case against the employer and then it goes to a board in order for them to vote. Listen to that. On who should be reprimanded or what should happen in that particular case. In most cases, the employee loses their job. So once again, you're going up against the employers. Were the government the employers? We can say yeah in certain cases because of how the transfer of ownership went. When they so-called abolished slavery, that meant they abolished slavery from happening from person to person. And then it changed over from person to business in 1863, 1865. And the big person or the big company that was in business, the big corporation, is the government. And that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. So it's going to fall back on the government. This is the reason why all they're going to do is tell you, oh, we're going to look at it. We're going to look at it.
Because if they would, basically, if they had to pay us what they owe us, they might as well pack up and move back to Europe and go back to Asia and go back to Africa and go wherever else, where their ancestors are from. Because in order to pay us from all the labor our ancestors have done in our country, for them or with them, in partnership with them, right? That's like we come into a business together and then you take the business and you go do your thing and I'm over here broke. And I'm like, yo, you owe me some money. And now you done got so successful in this business and now I'm coming, hey, we was together on this, where's my share of the profit? And guess what? You done neglected paying me my share for so long that my reparation would be the company. You might as well just give me the company. So if you look at that on a country scale, then they need to give us this country. They're not going to do that. This United States government don't even own the money that it's trying to give reparations for. It don't own the money. The Federal Reserve owns the money, which is a private organization that prints the American dollar. So the federal government does not own the federal currency note of this country. So they can't even get access to pay us reparations when they don't even own the money that's printed in this country. It gets deep, too deep.
They got the evidence right in front of them. How long? Are we going to wait a whole nother 30 years? And then another 30 years? And you going to still take a look at it? Like, go ahead.
They're actually not looking at the government themselves or the businesses themselves. They're actually going after information that's being held by these insurance companies. Because just like you said, like, I forgot what it's called also, would they go after the equal opportunity from the employment?
It's an EEO complaint.
Yeah,
they call it an EEO complaint. That's right. Okay.
And so they're going after the insurance companies to actually pay up on this. Because if someone was enslaved back then, those businesses took out
That's right.
insurance
That's
on
right.
those slaves.
Just like you got to take out insurance on property.
Yeah. And right now, when you're working specific jobs, everyone must have insurance.
That's right.
They don't allow you to keep certain jobs, most of them, without having insurance. The company makes you pay that out of pocket without even asking you. They just gonna put it on your check.
See, this gonna open up a can of worms. I'm trying to tell people they need to look at this.
So this is the information that they're going to go after, as far as it's not going to be your lineage. It's going to be, did you work for someone during that time frame, and did they take out an insurance policy on you?
Yep, and I told people the only way that you're going to verify if your family members were slaves was not by word of mouth, it's by paperwork. Okay? They will have indentures. I told you indentures is a contract. That's what that means. If you don't have any family member that has I'm talking about written indenture, that means they were not enslaved. That means they were not employed. Then you need to start taking a look at what did they do? What were they doing to survive? See, that's going, like I said, that's going to open up another can of worms. Because the majority of your family members were landowners. Okay? Or, it's multiple different jobs out there that happen, but a lot of our people were in business for themselves. I'm trying to, you're going to see it.
Yeah.
So just like they said, that the task force in California has to come up with and approve a plan on how so-called black Californians will be able to prove their ancestry. Good luck.
Good luck.
Because there's only one way for you to do that. Ain't no getting around it. Ain't no taking no DNA tests.
Nope. No Ancestry.com that'll give you all your you can Google your ancestry because they're going to tell you that's where you're from. Just Google it. Nah. And most of the black Californians aren't, a lot of them aren't actually from California, but they came from the South during the Great Black Migration. And then you have the original Californians. So it's deep. It's real deep. Very deep.
You're going to have to go right back to the paper trail of your individual family members. And I've been telling people this for years. It's not going to change. And if you want reparations, that's the only way that's going to work. You have to prove it on paper. See, right here it says that my grandmother worked on this plantation. This date, this time, you gotta have it all. Otherwise, the government ain't gonna go off of word of mouth.
But they're also looking specifically for Africans, because this bill details Africans.
Explain that.